please welcome our keynote speaker, Joth Ricci. Joth is Chief Executive Officer of Dutch Bros Coffee. Prior to joining Dutch Brothers in January of 2019, Joth served as President and CEO of Adelsheim Vineyard and President of Stumptown Coffee Roasters. In addition to his leadership in the beverage industry, he is Chairman of the Board for the Oregon Business Council and co-founder of Taste for Equity. Joth is dedicated to mentoring and advising boards, organizations, and individuals around strategic initiatives to ensure strong economic growth throughout the region and equitable opportunities for all. Joth, welcome to the Ben Venture Conference.
So the first lesson is always bring your brand on stage, right? So I've drank soda, I've had beer on stage, I've had coffee on stage, water, you name it, I've done that. So always represent your brand, because that's who you're associated with. So Tower Theater. So built in 1940 by probably some entrepreneurs, right? There were probably less than 2,000 people that lived in Bend at the time. But they built a theater for 450 people. 25% of the town could fit inside this theater. Pretty crazy moment, right? 1940, 83 years later, this space is still going. It's gone through some rough times. Joth Ricci, my grandfather, moved to Bend in 1951. And he was on the search, grew up in Boston, kids were raised in Boston. Didn't want to be stuck as an East Coast guy in Boston. He wanted to come to the West and discover new, blaze a new trail, come out. He landed in Yoncalla, Oregon, from Boston, believe it or not. Anybody been to Yoncalla? And it was too wet. Dreary and wet, which if you live in that part of the state, you can definitely understand. Yoncalla is probably a little north of where it gets dry down in Southern Oregon. So somebody says you should go to Bend. So in 51, he moves to Bend and raises these kids and this family. There were 3,000 people here at the time. Tower Theater's 10 years old. And in 1968, Bend got too big for him. It's probably 17,000 people at the time. And Ben gets too big, so he's off to his next venture to go try something new. And he ends up buying 5 acres in between Sisters and Redmond on the Deschutes Canyon bluff there. So we would better know this as a mile north of Eagle Crest today. But at the time, he wanted to blaze a new trail and be out and built this small house right on the canyon. The newborn who got to go there remember standing out on that deck that he built over the canyon and looking on a really beautiful day, you could see from Mount Hood to basically the South Sister. And one of the first things I did, when I remember to this day, when I'm probably 2 or 3 years old, I could name every one of those mountains. And it became part of this unconditional love that I have for the state of Oregon. And I say unconditional because it's tried me at times, believe me. So I guess I'm the black lab of Oregon, all right? So I love this place. I grew up loving this place. Helen Ricci, after Jim died, moved down about 5 blocks from here on Broadway and passed away there in the early 2000s. So the roots of my family in Bend and part of this theater and what it's been all about has been a guy who blazed a trail, who took a chance, who wanted to do something different for his family, who always wanted to try something new. At the end of the day, he became the entrepreneur who created training for Arabian horses worldwide. And he did that on that bluff in between Sisters and Redmond. But he blazed a trail, he tried things new, he was always pushing the envelope, he was always trying to think of different ways to do things. And the Arabian piece, he got invited to the Montreal Olympics and was this kid that always loved animals but felt like animals needed to be treated differently. And so he created a way to train them, became a world-class way to train not just horses, but really paved the way for how you treat animals. So So for me, that's a long way of saying it's great to be here. There's a lot of roots for me here in Bend. There's a lot of roots for me. I can tell you my dad's probably pretty happy that I'm standing on stage at the Tower Theater right now. So my name is Joth. Let's get to that first. You take the A-N and the A-N out of Jonathan and you get to Joth. So maybe in the spirit of what Jim Ricci was about, my parents didn't want me to be shortened to John. So since the spring of 1968, ever since I could talk, I've been explaining Joth. So I just get it out of the way, all right? So it's not, I don't have a lisp, there's nothing there, it's just how you say it, all right? So I've been fortunate enough, really through my career to have a lot of amazing experiences. I'm a guy with a degree in education from Oregon State. Okay? And for the ducks in the room, I married a duck. So we're definitely, so it's great. We've been together for over 30 years. So, but all I really ever wanted to do was teach, and I just wanted to teach kids and coach basketball, and that was what I wanted to do. And the first part of my story is that you never know what's going to happen, and so go give life and make it your best, and then let kind of the journey of that take you on trails. But if you try to over orchestrate the things that you're doing, eventually you'll run into roadblocks that you don't know how to deal with. So let life and the journey take you to where you want to go. So for those of you that are presenting today, give it your best, and who knows what will happen, right? You've got a great idea, go make it happen. And since that time, I lucked my way into business coming out of school. It was a bad time to get into education, and the best thing that ever happened to me is that I didn't get a job at Sandy High School to be the JV boys basketball coach and a business teacher at Sandy High. I didn't get that job, which sent me into business, and I spent 10 years at Johnson & Johnson with a company that was all about the customer. So for anybody who knows the J&J story and the Tylenol story specifically, if you go back to the 80s for Tylenol, that was a rough decade for the Tylenol brand because of cyanide poisoning and people who had died. But what J&J did is J&J wrote the textbook on how to take care of the customer and really built the new business model for how to treat the customer. No matter who you were as a company, no matter who you were as a brand, how big you were, how small you were, there was a playbook for taking care of the customer, and J&J basically wrote the playbook. They wrote it on a set of values. They wrote it on the way that they trained everybody who came into their organization. I was on the consumer side, so I spent a lot of time in grocery stores and retail and lived all over the country and managed everything from Walmart to Bartell Drug in Seattle. But J&J wrote the textbook. And I think to this day, the case study for that poisoning is still taught in many business schools around the country. And I've seen some head nods who know the case study. Well, I got the chance to grow up in business working for all those people that dealt with the tamperings, directly for McNeil Consumer Products, who was J&J, and they took me in, and I basically got my MBA. It took me 9 years to get it there, but I spent the first 9 years of my career at J&J and learned a lot about customer, people, how to lead, the things that were important, the things that weren't important. All of those things set a foundation for me as I was able to move on and grow with companies. But in 2000, maybe like my grandfather, I didn't want to be from the East Coast, and I didn't want my kids to be from the East Coast. We had 2 young children, and I was rising up through the ranks at J&J and doing some amazing things there, and kind of had this path set where all roads at J&J led to New Brunswick, New Jersey. That was not home for me. Remember where my unconditional love is. So as I'm rising up through the ranks on a great career path at a very big corporate company that was amazing, I came home from work one day and I looked at my wife and I said, you know what? I want my kids to know the rivers and the mountains and the lakes. I want them to know their families. I want them to be Oregonians. I want us to have all that in common. I didn't want us to be a family that was split, that we knew where home was and they knew where they thought home was, but I didn't want their home to be where they thought it was going to be. So I gave up everything, quit it all, and came home. No job, No nothing. All I had was me. And was able to utilize a network of people who I got to know to get connected back in town to figure out what I was going to do. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I probably would have just ended up going back to teaching. And what's interesting about that is you start to connect and you start to talk to people and you start to come to things like this and you start to, figure out where your networks are. And I met the founder and CEO of Columbia Distributing, third generation family-led business. And Ed was building something at the time that no one had done in the country in distribution. He was paving the way for the new way to do distribution. And somebody had said to him and to me, you should go you need some professional management. Like you need to figure out what you're going to do here and figure out a way to basically elevate the work that you're doing. And he was running into some tough times. He was relying on things that had worked well for him 10 years ago, but in the new age of doing things, it wasn't going that great. So he looked at me and he said, I've never seen anybody with a resume like this, and I've never hired anybody outside from beverage, but if you come do this with me, we'll figure it out. No job description, no nothing, just help me figure it out. And so he said, I'll give you 90 days, and if it's not working in 90 days, come to me, no strings attached, you can walk away, no problem. So I take a chance, he takes a chance. 2 years later, I was the GM of that company, and we were rebuilding an entire system of a distribution model that ended up being the model for what I think a lot of the country ended up following after Ed's vision. But without that vision from Ed and without the risk that he was taking and the things that he put on the line to do it, we would have never done that. 5 years later, they sold that business for, I think it was a record number in the country for a distributor. But without some of the hard times he went through, which you will all go through as you continue on your path, he would not have gotten to the place that they did when they ended up exiting that deal. But he had to take some chances along the way, reshape the business model that he was building, and bring new people in order to help him grow. That story into itself is an hour-long talk, but I'll shorten it to the 2 minutes that I just did. But I think you get the point. So then I had a chance to go to Jones Soda. Who knows the Jones Soda brand, right? Pretty awesome, right? So I got to be the CEO of Jones Soda. But I got recruited to do that because the founder came to me and said, hey, I watched what you did at Columbia. Can you come do that for me? Well, Peter Van Stolk was the founder of Jones. Peter's premise was that the world needed a different soda. But he did it through photographs. So think about it. It's 1998. It's this kid in Vancouver, BC, taking photos, cutting them out, figuring out a way to replicate the photo and put it on a bottle. This is 98. We're not even really using the internet yet. And the iPhone doesn't exist. But his vision was that he thought the world was going to go into photography. And he thought imagery and personalization of a product was going to be the future of where it was going. Think about that. It's 1998. In the late 90s, he got the IP to the customization of a consumer product through the internet. In 98. He was way ahead of his time, and he was brilliant, and he had no business running a public company. And he had taken the company public on NASDAQ, raised a big pipe. He was all about his idea. He was all about, he could gather, if he was speaking today, you would all be up cheering for him at the end of the talk, because he had that kind of magnetic personality. That magnetic personality didn't necessarily translate to running a publicly traded business. But his ideas were amazing. He did the IP. When I was interviewing with him, he told me that the world was going to go to video and that we needed to figure out how to do My Jones video because video was the next place that everybody was going. That was the fall of 2007. He was then creating My Jones music because Napster had come out, which, by the way, the founder of Napster was an intern for me at J&J. because he was the son of one of the VP of sales. Crazy. Peter wanted to do My Jones Music because he wanted people to be able to create customized playlists just for them and go to Jones Soda to be able to download it. It had nothing to do with soda, but his ideas were all over the map. Because he couldn't stay focused on the thing that he wanted to do, it got himself in trouble, and he got too bifurcated in his ideas, never stayed focused on the one thing, and wasn't relentless about the one thing because he couldn't stay there. So as you think about your idea or the things that you want to do, be careful of the shiny objects, because the shiny objects will take you directions that will get you off your game. Be careful. Then you got to hire guys like me to come in and fix it. All right? So that company was public. The other piece of that story is on everything goes well. My first earnings call in March of 2008, the company almost got delisted because we almost traded down to zero, because it was the first time we had reported. I had taken a bunch of losses that the company had never reported, and we reported this big loss. The company had never done that, and I think it's behind me. Stock goes from like $10 a share to $3 in a day. Literally bounces around zero. We almost got halted trading to protect the valuation of the company. By November of 2008, now think about it, it's November of 2008, our stock was down to 25 cents a share. The company went from $850 million in value in the spring of 2007 to 5 in November of 2008. At that point, I get into resuscitation. Because now it's about how do I resuscitate this business to make sure that it stays alive for the long haul. Again, that's another story for another time. But the good news is that the guy who was the VP of operations for me at Jones in 2008 and 9 and 10 is now the CEO. And he's running a nice business that is truly focused on what it does and what it does best, has removed all of the obstacles or all of the shiny objects, got them all out of the way, and stayed very focused on a plan that basically we wrote in 2009 to carry that company to where it is today. So, great lesson out of Jones, and it's one of those deals that some of the best lessons that you learn are from some of the hardest times. Pay attention to the hard times. There's so much more to learn than there are from the good times. So much more to learn. I think that's somebody who said something earlier about valuations today. It's a good place to be starting a business because you're in a really nice spot to be in valuation. 5 years ago, it's a different map. You think you're really wealthy and people are telling you how great you are, but today's a much better time to be starting something. So as we move on, I start to kind of get this reputation in business, and I go to Stumptown, and the Stumptown thing was, we have this toddy that we make in these plastic buckets in the back of the coffee shop. But we think there's something there, and somebody says, well, you need to talk to Joth. He'll help you figure out how to take that, what to do with it. So 100-page business plan later, for Dwayne Sorensen, who was the founder at Stumptown, who really just wanted better coffee for everybody. He thought Starbucks coffee sucked. I mean, he really did, and he'd tell that to anybody who would listen to him. It's like, it's not treated well. It doesn't really reflect what coffee should be about. Coffee has hundreds of flavor notes. It's a beautiful product. It's a very beautiful product from all over the world. It has a story and a pageantry to it that products don't have. Wine's probably the next thing that's close to coffee. But coffee should be treated differently, and Dwayne was all about that. But he was 10, 12 years in. He was getting a little little uneasy, kind of wanted to do something different. So I wrote a 100-page business plan on how to take cold brew to market in the country and how to make it. They liked it. 5 years later, Peet's Coffee owns Stumptown for one of the highest multiples ever in the coffee business, and we start the trend of the third way coffee business being basically bought up by the bigger players. But cold brew was the unlock for that, and we basically built the entire premise of a company that was built on coffee beans. We put the entire premise around this cold brew idea to take that nationally. Amazing product. We created a category. I think Stumptown gets the credit for that, as should, because not only did we did it with quality, but we also did it at a premium price point. So the other lesson here is that don't sell your product too cheaply. There's probably a better way to say that. But come to the market as a premium item. You can always go down, it's really hard to go up. So make people who want it early. Let the early adopters take it and let them build the reputation for the product. You come in too low, all you're going to do is play the price game, and you'll never recover from that. Protect your margin, go high, and that's what Stumptown was all about. When we took Stumptown bags to grocery, Starbucks was selling their 12-ounce bags for $6.99 to $9.99 and basically giving product away. So I walk into the grocers and I'm like, let's sell Stumptown for $15. Like, let's bridge that gap. Let's bring profitability back to the category. People will pay for it. Look at craft beer, right? People pay dumb amounts of money for a pint of craft beer. But people will pay for it. Come in high, you can go low. Be careful about coming in low because it's really hard to go up from there. Once you position your brand, it's hard to reposition it. So Stumptown thing goes on. I'm like, great, work for Pete's. Don't really want to work for the big company anymore. Time to move on. Next founder, David Adelsheim. David Adelsheim of Adelsheim Vineyard is one of the 5 founding fathers of the Oregon wine industry. There were basically 5 of them. And those people relentlessly protected the viticulture, the geography, the small towns, the boutique nature of what Oregon was about, because they wanted to sell high-end Pinot Noir that basically the region deserved to sell. They could have easily decided not to do that, but they wanted to sell high-end Pinot Noir and protect the region. They wanted to treat it like Burgundy. Because basically, if you go to the Burgundian region of France, it's basically on the same parallel as the Willamette Valley in Oregon. And the weather patterns are very similar. The temperatures are very similar. We have the Van Duzer corridor, which brings a very unique element to wine because it cools off the hot days and then it gets warm. Very good Pinot Noir loves that, and they knew that. And David, to this day, I just saw him yesterday, continues to protect Oregon as the value proposition that it is for the global wine scene. But their vision was so much bigger than anybody had thought. Everybody thought these guys were a bunch of hippie farmers in the valley growing grapes. But the vision that these guys had and how relentless they were, even to this day, of what it was they were trying to create there, should be an inspiration to everybody. Because Oregon now is on the planet as one of the best, especially Willamette Valley, as one of the best wine regions in the world, but started by entrepreneurs and founders that, again, next lesson, relentlessly protect your idea. Relentlessly protect it. And have a vision, have a thought, have the way that you want to do it. Everything that I've seen in every founder I've ever worked with, they relentlessly protect what it is that they do, and they pound that drum every day. Pound it. Because the great idea people, they didn't create something because somebody said that's what they wanted. They created it because that's what they said needed. So they create things that people didn't know they need. They don't create things that they heard that somebody wanted. By the time that happens, the idea is over. So now let's go to this one. 1992, 2 brothers, Grants Pass, Oregon, dairy farmers with no way out. This is 30 years ago. Dairy farming, I'll use the word stinks, and it's not any better today, right? Dad says you guys should think about doing something different because you're not going to make it in dairy. It's just not going to work. So the younger brother, who's 15 years younger than the older brother, decides, let's try this espresso thing. He called it espresso. and he had a mocha. And the mocha was like, he's like, this is the best thing I've ever had in my life. Like, let's try this thing. Like, let's do this. Like, so he paves the way for this idea. The older brother, who's was a Dairy Queen franchisee, who's the dad also said, get out of that. It's not worth it. They start this coffee cart, but they started on the premise of service. Because everybody, like, and even to this day, like, anybody can make anything that we do, right? Anybody can. But what's special about it? And their whole thing was service. They wanted to blow people's minds with how they treated people. Small town hospitality, most people coming through are their friends, they're checking things out, they want to be part of this thing, like they're hearing a story about it. And basically for the next 27 years, they were relentlessly focused on amazing service. And the theme was, don't worry about the dollar. Don't worry about the money. The money will take care of itself. Stay focused on the reason that you got here. Always take care of your people. Always. Relentlessly take care of your people, take care of your customers, treat everybody with an amazing amount of respect. Build it, and basically they will come, right? So they were also very patient. So I'm going to show you a little bit here about our journey. So the first thing that happened when I got here is we created a vision for the company. So I started with the company 5 years ago and worked with our founder, Travis Boersma, on a vision for what he wanted to create for the next level of the journey. 27 years, 319 locations. Remember that. And about 50-some franchisees. 27 years, 319, 50 franchisees, give or take. This is September of 18. So we get in this room and we start to create this thing, and one of the things we landed on is that Dutch Bros is a fun-loving, mind-blowing company making a massive difference one cup at a time. Fun-loving, first and foremost. Take care of your people, take care of your customers. Remember, you're not saving lives here, you're selling coffee, selling drinks, selling beverages. You're giving people things that they want. We're mind-blowing because every time a customer comes through, we want to blow your mind. And my guess is for anybody who goes through a Dutch Bros, we're pretty well known for our service. And some people like it and some people don't. Some people just want to put their hoodie on, pre-order, go pick up a coffee. I tell them to go to Starbucks if you want to do that. But if you want a great interaction, you want to put a smile on your face, you want to start your day right, come see us. Because for many of our customers, the best part of their day is when they come through our drive-thru. Because the rest of their day kind of sucks. So we have to remember that that's the responsibility that we have to our customers. We're going to make a massive difference one cup at a time, which means that every single customer that we serve is the most important person that we talk to that day. We never look past it. We never look beyond it. We are about that moment in time. So the journey of the company was also very disciplined. I talked about 319 locations in September of that time. They were very disciplined about their journey. He could have franchised in Texas in the mid-2005 era. Could have blown out his numbers, but what he didn't want to do was lose control of his brand. He wanted to make sure that he had control of the culture and the brand and what it was that we were trying to create. So, 27 years, 319 locations. So we get in there, we start to figure out a journey, we start to figure out what the unlocks were, and I am proud to say that we just opened our 800th location last week. But once we unlocked who we were, once we unlocked how to do things, once we figured out what it was that we could do, then we said, okay, let's go at this thing. And he was ready. He was ready to go take the unlock. He was ready to go figure it out. We had brought in private equity investment at that same time in September of 18. And so part of this whole journey was that, okay, private equity comes in and private equity is going to leave. So I always tell people that. I tell all my employees, by the way, most of those companies I've been with are either public or private equity held. And the one thing I guarantee them is private equity is going to enter and they will exit. And they will exit sometime in a 5 to 7 year period. And what our responsibility is now is to make sure our investor gets the return on their investment because we signed up for it. So when you do that, remember you sign up for it. So the journey has been amazing. You can see the different variations of our shops up there. And the other thing we've done is we've gone to a company-owned model. And why we did that is we proved out that if we could run a company-owned business and a company-owned model, we could protect the brand, we could protect the culture, and we could improve our EBITDA in multiples by the profitability of the business, which at some point would set us up for a better exit for the private equity firm. As we've been along the journey, we've expanded to these states. We just opened Alabama and Kentucky in the last couple of months. Tennessee has been a great state with 11 states, but we started to kind of have this journey. So as we were talking about going public 3 years ago, we had to start to give a vision of what it was that we wanted to accomplish for our investors. The vision was 4,000 shops in the next 10 to 15 year period and lay out a contiguous territory plan for how we were going to get there. So every investor meeting I was in, every time I was on the street, whatever I wanted to do, I had to take them to this slide and talk about how we were going to take this brand and build it across the country. I dissected every move that the company needed to make in order to get to the 4,000 shops and why it mattered. You will notice the dark gray area up above. It's cold and dark in those markets. We don't sell as much product in cold, dark markets. So we decided to go to sunshine states and prove out the model. And we do better in warmer weather. 90% of our drinks are cold. And so we decided to stay focused and not get caught up in this massive land grab. We were very focused on contiguous territory and contiguous markets. So when we went public, we were basically focused on these things. We had 5 growth strategies that we held relentlessly to in everything that we talked about. So number 1, continue to find and develop our people who are our growth capital. We are a people company that finds real estate. We are not a real estate company that brings people into it. Our people model drives everything that we do. Number 2, open new shops wherever people want great beverages. 4,000 locations is our goal. We're very much on path and have built the systems to be able to do that. Number 3, increase brand awareness and encourage deeper customer engagement. Really engage with customer, think about technology, the advancements of technology over the next, really it's happening to us right now, but when you think about over the next 5 to 10 years, you have a massive advancement in the consumerization of technology. Be ready for that. If your business model doesn't include that, you have missed the point. Invest in and use digital technology to improve the experience. We're all about speed. We need to keep people moving, so we need to put technology in place to make sure those things happen. And number 5, expand margins through operating leverage. If I can give you a piece of advice, relentlessly protect your margin. If I was looking at a P&L, the number 1 place that I focus on is your margin and your margin percentage, because then I can tell you your survival rate. People get too caught up in the top line. The banks worry about the bottom. As an operator, focus on the middle. And make sure you have a sustainable business that will get you through the times. So Dutch went public in September 15th of 2021. It's this crazy brand, this brand from Dutch Bros from Grants Pass, Oregon, which the market really didn't even know about when we went public. We were the highest multiple of a deal of its size in the history of the New York Stock Exchange. Thank you. It's a small Oregon company. We did an offering at $400 million to the street. We raised $8 billion in capital for that $400 million. And people were blown away. Like, they didn't know what this story was, but as we got out there and how excited the fever pitch that we raised for it was pretty amazing. This little company out of Grants Pass, it was very disciplined, very focused on culture and its people, was able to do that. Okay, I'm looking at my clock. I'm going to move a little bit quicker so we can get to Q&A, all right? Next, I'm going to give you a couple things to live by. So I got asked, what's my system? So I put together a little book about my system and kind of like, why have all these companies worked? Why have they done so well? So number one is when you're building your company and you're thinking about your how you do things, how do you and your people, how do you want people to act? What's important to you? Because if you don't build the core values, and what I call this is a personal values grid, if you don't have the understanding of what you want from your organization, from yourself and from your people, you'll actually never optimize the things that you want to do. Make sure that you understand what's important to you and how you want your people to be. It will help you in the hiring process. It will help you in how you do things. It will help you in the conferences you go to, so on and so on and so forth. Number two, if you're an entrepreneur, you don't have balance in your life. I understand that. However, do your best to achieve some type of balance in your life. You will be better off for it. Your company will be better off for it. Your people will be better off for it. For me, it's intellect, health, relationships, experience, and your craft. And I call work your craft because if everybody just treated work like it was the craft that you were excited about and you were really interested in, we would do amazing things. A lot of people show up to work, but they didn't spend time enjoying their craft. What if we flip that around? What if you actually enjoyed what you did every day? But you do that through other things that you do in your life and the way that you take care of people. The last thing is, as you're building your company, I want you to think about these 5 things. Start with culture. What are you trying to create with your culture? Who are you? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? 2, then talk about your structure. What are the things that you need in your business in order to advance the idea of what you're trying to get accomplished? Then look at your team. Don't hire your buddies because they had a good idea, but figure out the people that you need to be successful based on the structure and the culture that you want to put together. Then you have a good planning system, and then when you're big enough and you start to have some more time, you get into the training mode. But in any company that I run, these are the things that are important to me. Culture, structure, team, planning, and training. Training, by the way, gets 20% of the weight. And most of what I train on goes all the way back to the values grid. I train people on the way that we need to act, how we behave, what we do. I always tell people, like, I hire you for the skill set that you have, which you're probably a lot, like, I don't tell the accountants how to account, like, that's not my thing. I'm not a lawyer, but I know how to treat them. I know how to be a team. I know how to think about how we create things. I know how to think about what we need to go get accomplished. So with that, there's a QR code if you want to scan this. There's a little gift in there for you if you want to do that. And I think we'll open it up to Q&A.
Thank you, Joth. This was incredible. Yeah, how about a round of applause for Joth? I'm just so happy that you could join us today. There were, like, every segment of your talk I wanted to dive in. It was really, you gave us so many good, very concrete takeaways. So thank you for that. So just for a reminder, menti.com, our code is 771-89796. Your questions will come directly to us up on stage. But I have a question. Okay, so you're here, you're in Central Oregon. It's like Dutch Bros country. I mean, it is everywhere. I see more stickers on the back of cars for Dutch Bros than I do the coexist stickers. You know what I'm talking about. So you're here, and is there like a celebrity factor for you? Are they just like, oh, he's here, Joth is here? I mean, what is that like? Come on.
So I don't ever announce myself. Like I actually I would say a secret shop. And so I don't ever go through a stand with the expectation that anyone knows who I am. And I try not to be the CEO that people, like I try not to be the CEO that everybody needs to know. They're actually the heroes of the story. It's not me. And so Even this morning we went through a shop, and I actually have an app that has a different color on it because I'm from HQ, and some of the broistas pick up on it and some people don't. And every once in a while I'll go through a shop and somebody will figure it out. And like, you're like, wait, like you're, I'm like, yeah, that's me. And
then they give you a great day.
They do. And so
Yeah.
I don't, but I'm always like, I want to see them at their best, treating the customer well. I just want to be a customer.
Yeah.
I don't need them to be anybody different because I'm going through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't expect that, but I just think they're probably so happy to see you because what an incredible thing you all have created together.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
okay. After 4,000 locations, is global expansion in the works? Big
Global,
question.
my answer to that is global to us is Kentucky and Alabama. And that's far enough geographically. But we do get, I probably daily get stuff from Saudi Arabia and India and Japan and, I mean, Europe. Like, you could blow this brand out globally pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think
but we've
so.
really, again, I've tried to play pretty disciplined to the strategy. And
Yeah.
honestly,
Bless you.
launching this business in Huntsville, Alabama is a very new experience.
A
for
whole
us.
other ball game,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, I think you're competing with like margarita drive-through stands there, so that's
Right, and you have and
that's
there's
tough.
like sweet tea, and it's
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know it's like you have to adapt to what they're about. So I think we're very respectful of the geographic challenges that are just in the U.S. right
How
now.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your biggest challenge? What's the hardest part of your job?
Just probably the amount of things that come at me
Yeah.
for my job. When you're public, public probably adds 40% more workload to a CEO's job than what you do if you don't have to do that. So, for me, like, I have the breadth of things that I have to deal with every day, from a bank in New York to a broista in Bend to whatever that is. The complexity of things that come at me every day are that's the hardest part.
Yeah,
and
I
plus
can-
you got a team, and you have a team to motivate and challenge, and you have a board and all the stuff that goes with that.
I can imagine. This is a fun question. Have you considered seasonal summer pop-ups on the dark gray section of the U.S.? Which is, you could really, if you didn't have context for that question, it really gets weird. But I think you know what the question is. Yeah.
So yes, I know what that question means. So I'll go back to the shiny objects, right? So, what I have been, in my tenure here, I've been very focused on, let's go execute the plan, and let's try to stay away from that one-off idea. And summer pop-ups are one-off ideas. They're expensive to execute. They're expensive to market.
Sure.
We also have, as you can imagine, we have a massive distribution system behind us to get product to our shops every day. And so what I've been very focused on is contiguous territory, contiguous routing for our distribution system. That's probably the distributor in me. I want to make sure that everybody makes money in the system. And so if I opened a shop in Minneapolis, or like the New Yorkers all want something on Long Island or in Times Square, like they want to pop up in Times Square. And even when we launched at the NYSE, they wanted us to do a pop-up there that day. I'm like, there's just no value to that. Like, it's super expensive, and it would take people away from what they're supposed to be doing every day. So let's just stay focused on who we are, and the rest of that stuff will come with time.
I appreciate that so much. We do have another question. Can you talk more about how consumerism of tech will impact your business model and revenue mix? That's a big question.
Yeah, big question and big topic. I saw a futurist speak, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years ago. And you ever get in a room with these futurists and see what they have to say? It's awesome, like how these guys think and what they say, and have been kind of watching the AI kind of unfolding, and not just the recent AI, but go back 10 years ago when AI started to come into search engines and things like that. What's happening at speed is you have this combination of gamification. So our young adult consumer has grown up gaming. They also think work is boring because we figured out a way to dumb down work and not taken the skill sets that all these kids have created through all of their gamifying. And if I don't know if any of you guys, like if you, there's probably people in this room that game and all that stuff, but if you've ever been on those things and watched the complexity of what they deal with, and they got their headphones on and they're, it's crazy. But the change that that's going to create in the next 10 years as this young consumer demands, and will be attracted to technology in the consumer space, it's going to change the face of it in a pace that, like, any adults, we've never seen the pace of change that's coming in front of us. At work, through the consumer experience, for the way people buy, the way people shop, the ease of which those things will happen, the ease of which brands will die because of that. There is a pace coming that is a massive change. And so, you're watching things like the Starbucks app or the app that we have, and the thing that we need to do is our app needs to be upgraded, and it will need to be upgraded again and again and again to match the expectations of this Gen Z consumer that's coming through and really changing the way things are done. And every generation has this. We're just sitting in that generation where, I talk to my team a lot about, don't be irrelevant. And be careful about irrelevancy, because if you don't think that technology matters to you or that you don't want to learn it, you will become irrelevant at a pace of change that we've never seen before. And, and that's for me too. Like, I'm on it a lot. Like, I hold myself accountable to learning and paying attention to what's going on. So just watch it as you're running your business, watch that.
I appreciate that answer so much. My grandma's on Instagram. It's huge, very easy to stay in touch. Okay, maintaining culture is hard as companies scale. What safeguards have you put in place to ensure that the unique Dutch culture is found in your furthest flung regions?
So one of the ways we protect that is we only promote from within on our operator team. So we have an operations business unit that is basically everybody who runs the shops. So the operator who got promoted to Huntsville, Alabama, or the operator that got promoted to Kansas City, Kansas, is somebody who came out of the Dutch Bros system, and they were the best of what they did. And we have about 300 operators today that are identified as prepared to move into a new region and open up a Dutch Bros territory. So everybody who goes into a new Dutch territory comes from within the system. And so we don't hire outside managers, we don't hire outside division managers or VPs. Everybody goes up from within. And we know if we do that, we protect the hiring process, we protect the training process, we protect the system of how we do things and what we do. And it's very, very well protected. On the HQ side of the business and the support side of the business, that's where we've hired outside talent to improve how we support the field and its system. But the field and its system, we let it run on its own. So we can ensure that culture. And I get asked all the time, like, I was in Texas, and why was the service there as great as it is in Grants Pass? Like, it's very similar. And the team does an amazing job of doing that.
That's incredible. With the shortage of labor over the past few years, how have you been able to maintain your excellent service as a point of difference?
So we never had a labor problem. We were open all through COVID. We were able to maintain being open. I think that we have prided ourselves on being a great place to work. And I'd say, that's held true in basically every market that we've been in. Our people make good money. It's been important to the founders from the time they opened this business to basically, I would say, overpay people. So, don't let a dollar get in the way of your ability to keep great people and do great things, because that's your number one investment, so that people will keep coming back. So if you short your labor and you treat them poorly, all you're doing is taking down your business and your customer service and everything that goes with that. So we have amazing people that are recruiting in markets every day. We have a system that in a lot of ways people come through the shops and they get the vibe of what we're about, right? Because we basically say that we're basically running a party every day. And we let our people pick their music. There's a lot of team building that happens in shops in the way that they treat each other. We are a heavy tip business, and our people make a lot of money on tips, so they understand that the more that they take care of people, the tips usually come to help support them. And I think we've really prided ourselves on being a great place to work. And so But that doesn't just, you don't just say that, and it's like putting a core value up on a wall and then never doing anything with it, right? I mean, you have to live it intentionally every single day, or else you can lose it like that.
And you're explicitly hiring extroverts. I mean, these people are very friendly. It's impressive.
Well, you know what's interesting about that comment is that I get a lot of parents who will write me, or I'll see them and say, so my son or daughter got a job at Dutch Bros and couldn't communicate their way out of a paper bag when they went to Dutch.
Wow.
And they'll be like, I just want to say thank you because the systems that you guys have are creating amazing young men and women to be able to communicate, be able to problem solve, be able to think about speed and efficiency, be able to take care of people, because we give our broistas the autonomy to take care of the customer. It's very Nordstrom-esque, but it's like, if you think somebody's having a bad day and they really actually look like they're having a bad day, give them a free drink. But it's yours, it's your autonomy to be able to work with. And so a lot of parents are like, you've changed my son or child's life.
That's amazing.
Because of the way that you do things. And I think that's one of the, like for me, like I get goosebumps when I talk about that.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Because I think the value that Dutch Bros has on the young people who work for us, my hope is that becomes a resume builder so that when other employers are hiring, they see Dutch Bros on a resume and they know the type of person they're getting. And no matter how much I talk about technology and what's going to happen, people still run the show. So we got to be able to work together. Teams matter. The energy matters. Culture matters. And that will continue to be more important as we're working with technology to execute the things that we do. Our ability to operate in teams 10, 20 years from now will be probably more important than ever, and we can't lose sight of that.
They're collaborating in very small physical spaces as well, which is, we can't downplay that. Is there a meaningful difference in startup business culture between West Coast states that you've noticed?
I mean, Oregon is really an entrepreneur's dream. And a lot of great businesses and brands have come out of Oregon over the years. And I would say that we have this unique feel about us as entrepreneurs in Oregon because we are a state that most people in the country doesn't even know exists. So there's a mystery to this place. And the brands that come out of it want to be discovered because of this place where we live. Washington has a little bit of that, California not so much. I also am a believer that brands travel from west to east better than they travel east to west. Most emerging businesses that you'll find have been really West Coast generated, and they've taken off that way, especially in the consumer space. You'll never, and I challenge you to do this, you will not find a consumer brand that's gone national out of Houston. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And I've tested people on that. Chicago's a hard place to do a national consumer brand out of. But coming out of the place that we live and this special place that we have, there's this mystery about it. I get asked about it all the time all over the country, like, especially when Portland was going great, like it was a great place to be from. Now I went from, hey, so what's going on in Portland to, hey, like what's going on in Portland?
Exactly.
You know? So, yeah.
Exactly. What has been your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
Ooh, there's lots of them. I don't know that I don't know that I ever couch it as a failure. I mean, I just like, my approach to things is that you deal with it and you move on. I think that I could have done some things earlier at Jones to rectify the issue sooner. I was a pretty young leader that probably didn't have the full confidence. I think today's Joth would be different in that business. But I wouldn't call it a failure so much as like I would have done things differently. And I don't think that I think I have so much failures as I have just learning experiences and opportunities. Like if you think things as a failure, like you'll get in this bad place. Stay out of that place. It's really not a great place to be. But think about the continued pursuit of kind of happiness and and use the learning experiences to learn from. Don't treat them as failures or lack of success. It's a mindset that you can put yourself on to take you much further down the path.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you for that. Okay, so I have one last question. You mentioned balance is very important, and I'm wondering how you yourself stay balanced.
So I am I would not have written it in the book, which really came out of a story from the late 90s of a young leader that said, so how do you do it? Like, how do you family, work, all that? And I'm I'm a CEO, so I'm a pretty regimented person. I'm pretty regimented about my schedule. I'm pretty intentional about the things that I do. My schedule is, I pretty much live it every day in the way that I get up in the morning, like what do I do? How do I work out? I've been an endurance athlete for a long time, and I use those things to kind of give me peace as I get out and run a trail or ride a bike. Like it's a mind reset for me. So I've tried to put those markers out there to go accomplish over the years. I was taught once at J&J to carve, literally like CEO of our company at the time is like, you have to make time for your family. And no matter who you are, what you're doing, you have to make time for that. And actually I started scheduling time on my calendar so I would make sure that I was there for them. And otherwise you just get too caught up in the race and you lose sight of the things that are important. So, and I'm always reading. I'm a reader. I read every morning. I probably have multiple books going at any given time. I still like a hardback book, and I like to sit down. I'll audiobook if I'm driving, but I just really have to be intentional about it. And then the last thing is your relationships. And I'm very proud of the relationships I have with so many of the people who have worked for me at these different companies. But that has been intentional over time because you can easily get caught up in the time of your life that you're in and forget about that. But if you're intentional with your relationships, whether it's work or personal or family, you have to be intentional about that stuff. You have to think about those things and make time for it, or else life will get away from you and it'll pass you by. So,
yeah, thank you. That's really, I think it's really important for us to hear that. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here, for everything you shared today, and for the wonderful work that you're doing with all of the brands. And also you gave Napster a shout out. That feels like a small miracle. How about a round of applause for Joth Ricci?